Hello, I'm Jim Slusher, a representative of the Daily Herald editorial board. Today is Tuesday, September 15th, and we're pleased to begin a joint interview with candidates for the 41st and 42nd Illinois State House districts in the November 2020 election. I'm joined by our reporter Lauren Rohr, and our Shaw Media editorial board member Bob Rako was not able to join us today, but may appear somewhat later. I'd like to emphasize that as a reporter, Lauren Rohr is here to cover the race, but she does not have any influence into either Shaw's or the Daily Herald's editorial board's endorsements. And I'd also emphasize that it just so happens that Lauren Rohr and candidate Janet Yang Rohr have the same last name, but they are not related. So we welcome the candidates. From the 41st district with us is Democrat Janet Yang Rohr, Republican Grant Wehrli. From the 42nd district, Democrat Ken Mejia-Beal, Republican. So let's begin by asking the candidates to take just a minute or so to describe what motivated them to run and what they would like to accomplish in the next term. And Janet Yang Rohr, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I mean, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to do this. You know, for me, I grew up in this community. I went to, my husband and I both went to school here, from elementary school to all the way when we graduated from our rival high schools. And now our three kids will eventually go to the high school I graduated from. And, you know, so we've been here for a long time. And, you know, at the heart of it, we just want to, you know, I want to make sure that I'm contributing to the community that has given so much to me. So, you know, part of doing that has been, I've been on the school board, the Naperville 203 school board for the past 3 years. And, you know, what I want to do is, maybe I'll back up. My background is in investing in, you know, finance. I work at Morningstar, where I'm the head of managed investment data. And so, you know, most people know Morningstar for its star ratings. So that's one of the things that my team and I do. And, you know, for the time that I've been on the school board, I've really tried to kind of take that background and apply it to the things that we're doing in the school board. And that means, for example, cutting taxes by millions of dollars for taxpayers, abating those taxes, saving taxpayers tens of millions more through buying back bonds, saving them on interest payments. And we've done that while also kind of very specifically targeting the areas where it matters most when it comes to serving our kids and making a difference, like expanding early childhood education. So I just want to do more of that, bring that ethos to Springfield, spend wisely, make sure that we're focusing our efforts where it counts. And, you know, I also want to make sure that we are representing our values and our priorities in Springfield. And to my mind, I just don't think that's happening right now. You know, when you look at a lot of the issues that really matter to the people in our district, whether it's like healthcare or women's rights, gun control, I think Representative Wehrli's views just really don't match a lot of, well, the majority of the district. And you know, even in the areas where there's, I think, widespread agreement, unfortunately, I think at this point, our current representative has basically established himself as one of the most hyper-partisan voices in Illinois. And, you know, you can see that in his tweets. You can even see it in his notes to constituents. I just see him actively kind of like fanning that flame that is dividing our country, and that I and so many people worry about. And I think, you know, one of the byproducts of that is, like, even on the things that we all agree need change, you know, by his own words, he said himself, he can't get his bills passed. And so I say, you know, to some extent, let's trust him at his word. He can't effectively at this point do the job of a legislator, and it's time for a fresh start. It's time for less complaining, less blaming, and you know, I come from a world where I only get paid if I deliver results. Probably like most of us.
Janet, I want to stop you there if that's okay. And I don't want to
Sure.
spend too much time on this very first question. So Representative Wehrli, I'm sure there's some things that you'd like to respond to there, but also if you would look at why you decided to run again and what do you think you could accomplish.
Of course, Jim. Thank you for having this forum. I look forward to this. Having a free press is critical to the success of our state and our nation. So I applaud what you're doing here. I spent 10 years on the Naperville City Council, and during that time, I was known as a budget hawk. We cut taxes repeatedly, and when the Great Recession hit, we did what most units of government around our nation did, except for our state. We actually cut, we made appropriate budgetary changes to make sure that we could survive and thrive once we got through the Great Recession. I too am born and raised in this community. I have a family vested interest in our mutual success. My volunteer spirit started at a young age, whether it was laying bricks at the Riverwalk or volunteering to coach sports. I mean, community involvement has always been very personal to me. I hear my opponent question my values and my priorities, and she talks about women's rights. Well, I'm one that broke away from my party, and I gladly supported the Equal Rights Amendment when it came before us for a House vote. That is something that I take great pride in, because equal means equal. She talks about my record on, gun control. I have ran full bump stock bans to ban those. So once again, we're seeing some distortion from the other side, and something they're dealing in fear. They want to make people not like me because they're twisting words and votes. And instead, I'm going to run on my record and my vision, which is something that is sorely lacking in Springfield right now. References to not getting bills passed. That's simply not true. I understand I'm in the super minority. I must work across the aisle in order to get things done. And I've done so, and my record shows that. At heart is this community that I represent, the 41st Legislative District, all the way up from Al's Pizza down to Wheatland Township. We are all in this together. And I look forward to defending some of these personal attacks, because that's not what Naperville and Warrenville is about. They're about results, and I can show you the results. I'll go back to women's rights again. She claims that I didn't support fair wage. Here are the votes from the House floor. I voted twice to support that. So they're distorting the truth in order to meet their narrative, which I find to be shocking for someone who claims to be a data analyst from Morningstar. It makes me question what sort of integrity they have there if they're just going to simply take data points and twist them to meet their narrative. I look forward to this debate. I will gladly answer any questions, and thanks again for having us here.
Thank you. Ken Mejia-Beal, if you would go next. We can't hear you.
Can't hear him.
I wonder if do you have a cell phone? I wonder if you could call the cell and do the audio by phone. Yes, if you could, that'd be great. You can say do it while you're on video. And if you don't mind, I'll go ahead while you're doing that. We'll go to Amy Grant and let her speak, and then when you're ready to go. Again, I'm assuming there must be something in the audio on your computer. So, Representative Grant, if you would explain why you're running again and what you'd like to accomplish.
Okay, I hope you can hear me. You can?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me here, all of us actually. And I am running again because I think that possibly, well, I don't want to make any promises, but I decided to run originally. I was a county board member from 2012 to 2016, and my predecessor decided to run for governor. And I actually did a little praying on it, and one of my friends said, okay, well, what happened? And I said, nothing happened. I keep on thinking about it. She said, Amy, run. And so I had a primary opponent, and I managed to get through that. I managed to get through $1.5 million that Mike Madigan put against me for my opponent. And then I managed to be able to get to Springfield and drive 3 hours there and stay in a hotel, and then get batted around like a ping pong ball the whole time I'm there. And unfortunately, that's the truth. And you can whine and complain, but the truth is the truth. The reality is the reality, and there's nothing Grant and I can do about reality. I mean, it's just the truth. So what I've proposed is that possibly with the corruption in Springfield and with machine politicians, and I'm not even quite sure that's all glued together and that's all melding and going in the same direction, I suggest that we maybe take a look at our retirement system, which is one of the main glaring problems here in the state of Illinois, and we get together and we attack it with a attitude of we're all in this together, because we are all in this together, whether you're a Republican, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're not in the minority or you are in the majority, we're all in this together. This is our state, and this is a glaring problem. Thank you. Oh, did you hear me?
Yes, we heard everything loud and clear.
Okay.
We're still having some trouble with Ken,
Okay.
so I'm going to keep trying to work that out.
Okay.
And we'll come back to you, Ken, with the same question. But for the moment, Grant, I'd like to start with you since you're on the Ethics Commission, and I'd like to talk about ethics in Illinois. And first of all, and as a Republican, I'm sure you're specifically interested in Speaker Madigan's situation, but I'd like to know what you think about whether he should remain as Speaker of the House. And then secondly, what are the specific things that you'd like to see done that you think need to be done to have some real meaningful ethic reform in Illinois?
So I am truly grateful for this question. I not only serve on the Joint Commission on Lobbying and Ethics Reform, but I'm also appointed to the Special Investigative Committee #2, investigating the abuses of his office by Speaker Madigan. Ethics reform in Illinois could not be more paramount to our future success. Right now, we are in an ethical morass, and that is by design, specifically by the speaker, to make sure that he remains in power. So one of the things that, well, there are many things that we're looking at, but this is an issue that I've been pushing since day one I got to Springfield. A couple of things we need. First off, fair maps. Right now, we have the map system drawn, so politicians pick their representative and not voters picking who they want there. This is it's done by both parties across our nation. In Illinois, it's the Democrats that are doing it. It is not fair. It's not a good representative form of government. Then there's specific things in our campaign disclosure. Right now, if you look, every year we have to fill out our campaign statement of economic interest and campaign disclosure, and they're comical. They don't reveal anything. I am in favor of us moving towards what, at the very least, what judges do in the state of Illinois. It is a greater transparency for all to see. Right now, another thing we need to do is look at legislators that are lobbyists. When people hear that, they think that that's already illegal, but it's not in the state of Illinois. You could be a legislator and also a lobbyist at the same time, which is a massive conflict of interest. So there are many things here that we can do. Those are just a few examples, but nothing is more important in the state of Illinois about ethics reform. Let's look at some campaign finance. Right now, my opponent is gladly accepting hundreds of millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars from the speaker. This is what he does. He uses his power to shake down ComEd. You look at the deferred prosecution agreement, they got jobs, money, all of that. Then he uses that, he funnels that to candidates that probably mean well when they decide to run for office, but once they're under the hand, the velvet hammer of Speaker Mike Madigan, they will go down there. The first vote they will take is they will vote for the speaker to remain. They'll use the ruse that, oh, he's our Democratic nominee, never changing anything. So until we get real, meaningful ethics reform in the state of Illinois, we can expect more of the same.
Okay, thank you. I think Ken may be back with us now. Are you, we have your audio, Ken?
Yes, I am here.
Great. Then I wonder if you could go back. Jenna, we'll come to you next with the ethics question, but first I'd like to let Ken have a chance to introduce himself and why you decided to run and what you'd like to accomplish in the next term.
Thank you. And I do want to apologize for all the technical delays. So I'm Ken Mejia-Beal, and I'm running because I believe in change. So a little bit about my background. I've been in the finance industry for my entire career, where I've dealt in mortgage and, more importantly, property tax analytics. So I think I bring something special to the table. And I've been a resident here in Lisle, Illinois for about a decade now, give or take a few years. And I love living here. A little bit about how I got involved in politics. I started volunteering for various Democratic candidates in the area and knocking doors for them, and built that up. And I became the program director for the Democratic Party at DuPage County, something I'm very proud of. And the main reason that I decided to run is simply for the representation of people. So I do bring a finance background to the table, but I also bring community skills, community organization skills, and connecting folks from across the district, because it's a vast district. It stretches from Naperville all the way to Winfield. So connecting those communities and making a pointed effort to be able to speak and connect with everyone within the district is something that I think I excel at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to you on the ethics questions, but Janet Yang-Rohr, if you would respond to that question. What needs to be done regarding, if anything, regarding the Speaker of the House, and what does ethics reform in Illinois look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, on this point, you know, when I talk to voters, this is absolutely one of those things that comes up over and over again. And for sure, we need to bring trust back into the government. And I think I'm on a very similar page as Representative Wehrli here. Like we need ethics reform. You know, I do think one of the things that happens when you have outsiders, you know, looking at an insider's process, right? Like you can see where like the issues are. And what I've seen is like this ethics reform, you know, what needs to change. It's there's so much across the board that needs to change, and it doesn't matter which party you're with. We have, I just think we have too many entrenched politicians just exploiting too many loopholes, going into too many gray areas. And I think one of the things that infuriates regular people like me, and it's seeing how politicians can, you know, adhere to the letter of the law, but they just flagrantly violate the spirit of the law. And we only need to look in our own backyard at Representative Wehrli to see this. You know, after I think he's on his 6th year now. After hearing so little from him and all that time, you know, all of a sudden my neighbors and I are just getting these reams of, you know, like materials from his official office that are printed on, you know, with state taxpayer resources. And, you know, those resources are there to keep your constituents regularly informed, you know, over time, not as a backdoor way to have taxpayers fund your campaign. And I have to say, like, I asked about it because it just seemed so strange, like that I could be getting like 1-2 mailers a week from his office. And when I asked about it, they said, you know, everyone told me, well, you know, that's what they all do. And it's just that, like, just because that's what everyone does doesn't mean that you should do it, right? And so, you know, it's this practice
So
of
is that a
keeping to
forum
the
that you would use for connecting with
Yeah,
constituents, or how would
absolutely.
how would you use it?
You absolutely should use it as a way to connect with your constituents, but not like in you know 1 month getting 8 things from the office. That's not how it's supposed to work, right? I'm pretty sure you're supposed to be sending it out over time to show regularly what you're doing.
But to be clear, those numbers, you're estimating those numbers, correct? You didn't. Do you
Well,
recall a month when you got 8 things?
you know, I could, I don't have them all, but I know I definitely have some of them.
I can
And I could,
some.
yeah, well, he can probably give you like the number of letters, the number of, you know, things that he sent out. But I mean, let me just say that, like, it's this practice of keeping to the letter of the law rather than the spirit of it, right? That makes regular people so tired and so fed up with all of this. And so, to my mind, you know, if Springfield politicians, like Representative Wehrli, need more laws to stop them from gaming the system like this, then, you know, I guess so be it. I will go to Springfield to make those laws and make sure that we're serving the best interests of our community.
Okay, Representative Wehrli, could you quickly respond to the number of communications?
I absolutely can. So we get a legislative allotment every year for printing and things like that, and I use those. So if she's claiming that I'm over-informing her now, I find that to be shocking. I've done surveys every year since I've been in office. I hold kids fairs, I hold jobs fairs. It's just what we do. It's constituent services. What I would also like to point out is she did not answer the question on would she vote for Mike Madigan. She's going to dodge that because she knows she's getting paid. Her campaign is being completely funded by the speaker and his cronies. So she's trying to deflect ethics reform on me, when in fact, she's going to go down there and support the stoppage of ethics reform. She's going to vote for the speaker, and she can't deny that right now.
Candidate Rohr, can you respond to that? Would you vote for Speaker Madigan? And what other things do you think are issues involving his court situation?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, I'm focused on talking to voters, understanding what they care about, and, you know, if I am so fortunate to be able to take that vote, you know, once November happens, I will take that vote just like I take any other vote that I will, any action that I take for the 41st district, and that is, you know, I will take the vote that keeps our community as its number one priority. I will take the vote that makes sure that we can get our priorities, the things we care about passed.
And as it stands right now, you think that it's still that there's some question as to regard whether the Speaker of the House influences the trust that the people would have in the legislature?
Sorry, one more time? Yes.
Are you confident that the Speaker of the House can maintain the trust of the people of Illinois?
You know, I don't know. I know that between now and, you know, I guess January, like so much can change. And so I think what makes sense now is to focus on November, getting elected, and then from there, you know, making sure again that the best interests of the 41st district are served.
Okay. Amy Grant, if we could go to you with the question of what does ethics reform look like to you, and how do you see the relationship between the party and the leadership, whether it's Republican or Democrat?
Okay, I will have to reiterate a little bit of what Grant has said. One of the main things would be fair maps. A second thing would be term limits, especially for leadership. A third would be campaign contributions. A fourth would be lobbying reform. And then also the next one, which is very important, would be legislative rules, which are, well, I won't go into that. But anyhow, in January, we were in session for maybe a month and a half. And we had many ethic reform bills, but most of them are, excuse me, I'll have to say all of them were put into rules and never brought out and never held on and never talked about on the floor. So what we did was we did reach across the aisle and we voted with the Democrats to put an ethics reform commission together. And Grant, you're on it. But for some reason, they were supposed to get back to us in March and they never did. And we still don't have any findings on their meetings, or if they even had meetings. I think that they did. Grant, you could probably talk more about that. But I'm very happy this past time around in 2020, I put out an ethics bill, which would stop the revolving, it's sort of like a revolving door ethics bill. One day you're a legislator, and then the next day you're a lobbyist. no, that you need to have a 2-year waiting period in order to do that. And that was my bill. It did come out of rules, and it did made it to a committee, which I was very excited about. But then of course COVID happened, and I wasn't able to testify in committee on that. But I had bipartisan support. One of the first people who called to support me on that bill was Jonathan Carroll.
Okay, thank you. Ken Mejia-Beal, could you speak about the speaker and ethics and what you think ethics reform should look like?
Sure. So just like Representative Grant, I do believe that there should be you should not be able to go from being a legislator to being a lobbyist. I think it should be a 2-year gap in between. I also think that we need third parties to draw the maps to prevent gerrymandering. I think it's a huge problem. And I think that we have to have a system where voters pick their representatives and not the other way around. I'm also against the red light cameras. I don't think they keep communities safe. I think they line the pockets of corrupt politicians. And when I say that, I don't mean Republicans or Democrats. I think there's corruption on both sides. And I want to answer another question very directly. And that's the question of whether I will vote for Speaker Madigan. And the answer to that question is I don't know who is going to be up for that, who's going to be running for Speaker of the House. As of now, I don't know.
Can you say whether you have confidence that Speaker Madigan can gain the trust of Illinois?
I can't answer that, and I'll tell you why. There are so many people that do not trust not just Speaker Madigan, but politicians in general. It's up to him to rebuild his reputation with the state of Illinois.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to move to another question now. And this is also one that has hovered over just about everything in Illinois government. Amy Grant, let's start with you on this one, because I think you kind of raised it when you mentioned the session having to be stopped because of COVID-19. I'd like to know a little bit about how you assess the government's handling, or the governor's handling, of COVID-19 so far, but then more importantly, what role you think the legislature should have and how it should be part of whatever happens.
Yes. You know, I'm also wondering, can you see me?
Yes, you're very clear.
Okay. All right. I was just curious. I'm like.
Not showing up on your computer?
Okay. All right. Let's see. Well, I think we started off pretty good. We were handling the COVID situation and trying to make sure that people who were sick would have a bed and a ventilator if they needed it. We redid McCormick Place. My hospitals in my community were well supplied with PPE and many other things, ventilators, and I think the federal government also, you know, helped us along with it, and I think we handled that well. But then it went past 30 days, and Governor Pritzker decided, well, I'm not going to bother with the legislator. Apparently he doesn't think that it's a co-equal branch of government, which it is, of course. And he decided, nope, I'm just going to go this on my own. And he did. And we kicked and screamed and carried on and wrote letters and begged to go back to session. And finally in May, we were able to do that. It was very abbreviated, but having executive orders month after month, I'm sorry, I didn't think that was correct.
And how do you think the legislature could be involved in whatever goes forth in the future? Is there an avenue for that?
Well, I think that if we go into veto session, which I'm thinking that we will, I am not sure what the environment will look like at that time. will we need, Governor Pritzker says we can't get out of phase 4 or phase 3. I'm not exactly sure unless we have a vaccine. Will we have a vaccine? Will our kids be able to go back to school? All of that is so uncertain that I'm not quite sure what the environment will look like.
Okay, Ken Mejia-Beal, I wonder if you could take on that question of how well do you think the governor has done, and to what extent should the legislature be involved in what happens in the future?
Yeah, so I think the governor did a good job. I think he did a good job of trying to keep the COVID numbers down. My issue is that COVID became the entire equation instead of the sum of an equation. So while everyone was worried about COVID, our opiate addiction, overdoses, increased. We saw a spike in domestic violence, and overall, a lot of depression. And I don't think anyone factored those components in. So for me, I think that we should have looked at COVID as a part of a larger equation instead of just making everything 100% about COVID. In terms of the outreach to the legislation, from what I've heard, there was not a lot of outreach. So I do believe that legislators should be involved, especially when we are tied into a shelter in place for months and months at a time. I also believe that our municipal leaders should have been consulted a little bit better. So our mayors, our city council members, because every city in town operates differently. And I think that the best direction should come from those leading locally as opposed to from Springfield.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jenny and Rohr, how about if we turn to you? How do you think the response has been so far? And what would you like the legislature, how would you see them being involved in?
I'm personally thankful for the leadership role that Governor Pritzker took, especially as as more and more information has come out on what our current president knew and was hiding, and with the Woodward tapes, it's just, it's awful, and I think we're just lucky that we had leaders at at the state level, at more local levels, who are willing to really take leadership roles, and so for that, I think you can see that Illinois is just in a better place than compared to the rest of the country. Would there be things that I would do differently? Probably. I think the governor would feel the same. Sometimes you make decisions based on what you know at the time, and the thing is, I think at this point, like with more time, people are more circumspect, and we're adapting. I think it's good. Obviously, it would have been going forward. I think it'd be good to get more input from legislators in order to make some of these decisions. I have to say that some of the things that the House and the Senate have done are good, right? Like I believe, for example, that Representative Wehrli voted for paid sick leave, and that's so important in this time, in a pandemic. But I'd also say that what happened here, the pandemic, what it did was it brought to light issues that were already important. The pandemic just brought that into very obvious relief for others, that things like affordable health care, like paid sick leave are so important. And the thing is, I think it's important to point out that in 2017, 2018, Representative Wehrli voted against paid sick leave. And the thing is, again, what the pandemic did was make exceedingly obvious something that I think most of us already knew is, a necessity from a both economic and humane sense. And we knew, or we know this without a pandemic. And I think we need someone a leader who doesn't have to learn these lessons the hard way. That that we need someone who can fight for these issues even when there's no pandemic, who understands that having access to healthcare, access to these kind of benefits matter no matter what.
Thank you. And Representative Wehrli.
Thank you. Well, it's clear that my opponent's only tactic is one of insults and degrading politics. It's really unfortunate to see, because that's not what this community is about. And to bring this sort of just blasphemy here in politics is just shameful. So I would say the governor started strong in the beginning, but then quickly faded. Right now, I would give him about a C grade. I do have some issues with the number of executive orders that he's issued. We're on now executive order number 6. It's completely disrespectful to a co-equal branch of government. So anything going on now is on the governor, and I see that as some good, some bad. But we need to be involved in the process. So what exactly do I take some umbrage with what the governor is doing? Well, when you look at the metrics, so the part of the 41st Legislative District covers Will County. Well, Will County is, I believe it's called Region 7. When they changed that, when they took it back to Phase 3, they didn't use the same metrics as they did in Metro East. And businesses in the Metro East were able to open at a different capacity, 25%, where those in Will County were not, in Kankakee County. So we're looking for consistency in data. We can all deal with bad information, but we need to know what the plan is on a go-forward basis. And the governor just seems to be shifting the goalposts consistently. When we talk about the other impacts of COVID, mental health has to be paramount. I mean, the longer we go in this pandemic shutdown with bad information, the more mental health is going to be, it was a crisis before, now it's really even more exacerbated, and the governor needs to be more clear on what we can do there. We hear about the opioid crisis. Our own corner here in DuPage County has seen a tremendous spike in overdose deaths. And so there are ancillary things going on that the governor has failed to adjust to in IDES, in Illinois Department of Employment Security, an absolutely critical component and function of state government when things go wrong. We all hear on a daily basis, at least in my legislative office, the horrific experience that people are having trying to get something, a benefit that is due to them. The callback lists, it's inexcusable. At the local level, I will say that I thought our school board had it right at the first time when they were going to go with a hybrid model of reopening. And they backed off of that, and I believe it was due to political pressure. I'm married to an educator. She teaches in 203. I know that there are teachers that are ready to go back into the classroom on a hybrid model because they understand how important it is for these kids, these K through 12. They need that interaction with people. They need, they're mandated first reporters rather, for people that are, for kids that are getting abused. Right now, we don't have those eyes on those kids that we need to, even on a limited basis in a hybrid model of going back to school. There are things that are falling through the cracks, and that's where the governor's grade has, in my opinion, has been brought down to a C. But we absolutely need to get the General Assembly involved. One man is not a king in anywhere. And we need everybody to sort of toe the line here and do the work. Not every party has good ideas. Not every party has bad ideas. It's through that conversation that we can come up with solutions that move our state forward in a positive manner, and so we can all get through this crisis and come out better on the other side.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to turn to finances now to some extent and start with the issue that's on the November ballot for a graduated income tax. And Ken Mejia-Beal, how about if we start with you for this first question? That is, I suppose first, if you could explain whether you support the graduated income tax, and then secondly, deal with what I think is one of the chief questions that people who are concerned about it have, which is that the tax rate. Sorry, I'm not sure what was causing the all the feedback, but the question is, many people are one of the biggest questions that opponents have, people who are concerned of it have, is that once the flat tax is removed, it's Katie bar the door for the lawmakers to make taxes whatever they want. And I guess that would put the onus of that, if graduated income tax is approved, on lawmakers. And what assurances can you give to people that you can manage the amount of money that would be available and that we wouldn't need consistent and constant tax increases to fund government.
Okay, thank you for the question. So, in theory, I support the fair tax. I think that any initiative to help middle-class families is a good initiative. This is my issue. I think we look at the fair tax and we don't look at, we're not looking at the big picture here. So yes, I support the fair tax, but in theory, if we just initiate the fair tax and we have politicians still spending money carelessly, it doesn't really matter. So what I can say is I am someone with a financial background, and in my personal life, I'm pretty frugal. So I don't believe in spending money we don't have, i.e., the budget that was just passed. A lot of that was based on money that we don't even have yet. So I don't believe that we should be basing budgets on funds we don't have. So back to the fair tax, if it does pass, we're going to need legislators that make sure that the money is being used correctly and not being wasted.
Okay, thank you. Grant, I wonder if you could respond to that, your feelings about the tax proposal and how you as a lawmaker see the legislature's role if that passes.
Did you say Grant or Amy Grant?
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy Grant, yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that either. No, thank you, Grant, for clearing it up. No, I do not support the fair tax or the graduated income tax, it's a dangerous thing, and they say that it helps the middle class. I hardly see that. If you look at the table if you make between $0 and $10,000, you right now are taxed at a 4.95%. If the fair tax is put into place, your taxes will only go down 4.75%. That's hardly helping the middle class or the lower income. So no, I think that what should be on the ballot should be something more on the lines of how are we going to stop the automatic 3% COLA increase every year. It's automatic. There's no state, not even California, that does something so goofy as that. We just can't sustain it. I would prefer to see something more important right now, not gathering more taxes, but looking at the problem that we have, and we all know that it's there, and concentrating on the real problem, not just continuing to tax people to death. We have high out-state migration. We have high property taxes. That's the #1 in my community. And those things I think need to be addressed. Also, I think, leadership change. We need to have a change of leadership. And I think maybe we can possibly get some more talking, some more in it together talking.
Okay. And then Grant Wehrli, if you could go and.
Absolutely. So I'm opposed to the graduated income tax. It's happening not only at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, but then COVID, just complicates it even more. We have so many suffering, businesses suffering, the economy suffering. I'd like to point out that my opponent has never met a tax hike she didn't like, though. She's been on the school board here in Naperville for 3 years, and she's raised taxes 3 times. So I expect her to be fully in support of it. But why do I oppose the graduated income tax? Politicians in Springfield lied to you when they said the tollway was going to be free. They lied to you when they said that the lottery was going to pay for education. They lied to you in 2011 when they said that tax hike was going to be temporary. This year's fiscal budget spends $2 billion with a B more than last year's budget. Every other state, or most other states, actually made cuts in the time of COVID. Not Illinois. We poured kerosene on a raging fiscal inferno. It relied on almost $6 billion in borrowing from the federal government just to make our budget whole. So we're literally borrowing money. We're on the state credit card trying to fund these programs. When I hear that, the middle class and lower class, there's going to be a tax cut. That's not true. Maybe on the income tax side, it's a very small amount if you actually look at the math behind it. But let me remind people of the trailer fee that went from $18 to $118. Let me remind people of what it costs to register your vehicle now, the license plate fee. We now have a gas tax that's 19 cents higher than it was with an automatic escalator as time goes on. So when they say that they're going to save money for the middle and lower class with this graduated income tax, it's simply not true. What we need to do, and Amy Grant touched on it, is we need to have a budget that lives within our means. That's one. And then two, prioritize what our spending is. I work closely with special needs providers in our community, Ray Graham, Little Friends, and I see the way that the state treats those that are providing essential services to those that the state should truly be helping, and it's embarrassing. We need to prioritize spending. Instead, what we get in Springfield, and this is the game they play, is towards the end of session, there'll be 24 hours left. They'll drop the budget on us. It's anywhere between 1,600 and 200 pages long. There's a video of me out there on YouTube questioning what some of the line items are. They can't answer them. And then they know they have the votes because that's what Madigan says, which, by the way, my opponent still can't tell if she supports Madigan or not. She can't answer that because if she says no, then there goes her campaign funding. So there's a tell. But they want chaos. They want this budget to be rammed through with no eyes on it. When I was at the city of Naperville, we had a budget process on an annual basis that lasted 10 months long. We would post it. We would hold workshops. We invited the public to opine on it. That's not how it is in Springfield. We need to get our fiscal house in order before we go to the taxpayers for one more cent.
And finally, Janet Yangror, your feelings about the tax and your position as a legislator if it passes.
Yeah, I mean, here's the reality. Under the graduated tax, which every single one of us as voters, everyone watching, has a say on, is that almost every single person in Illinois would see our tax bill go down. So while I've seen a lot of these slippery slope arguments, the thing is, I think voters should always remember that whether our state retains a flat tax or moves to a graduated tax, we have a very powerful tool to keep our legislators in check, and that's voting, right? I think it's just incumbent upon all of us to vote out legislators if their actions don't reflect our values and our priorities. For me, my priority is to make sure that the middle class is protected from tax increases. So we cannot we cannot raise taxes on middle class families. We cannot raise taxes on retirees. Some of Representative Wehrli's comments about the school board just reminds me that it's one of the conversations that we have in the school board a lot. Like, we have absolutely abated millions of dollars and lowered tax bills by millions of dollars, and we have saved tens of millions more through our bond repayments, saving us from very large interest payments. But one of the things we've talked about is like it actually doesn't. Maybe we need to put a line item on the tax bill so it's more clear to people that actually happened. And it's kind of one of those tensions that always happens. Like, do you focus your work on actually doing the work, or do you focus your work on talking about the work you did? And I guess as a leader, that's one of your responsibilities, to tell people what you actually did. But that is a good reminder, I think, for me, for bringing back to the school board. Maybe we do need to be more explicit about what we're doing. But in the end, I mean, I will support any legislation that protects middle class families from tax increases.
Okay, and Amy Grant, did I ask you this question already?
Yes,
Well, I lost my place.
that's okay.
We've been through this question with everybody, correct? Amy, I think we have time for just one more question, and I'd like everyone to be as succinct as possible. But one of the things that has happened in addition to COVID this year has been the explosion of anger on the streets regarding criminal justice reform and police reform. And I wonder if you could speak about what level of criminal justice reform might be needed at the state level in Illinois, and are there reforms that are needed, and if so, what would they look like to you?
Okay. Well, I'm going to first off condemn what happened in Minnesota with George Floyd. There's no perfect anything, and there's no perfect police force. So I would suggest, this is just one idea, that they collect data on police officers that have had misconduct in the field, even if it's small misconduct, and make sure that that person knows that they are being watched and that they need to adhere to the law enforcement code of ethics or code of humanity. Do I believe in defunding the police? Absolutely not. I have a police friend. He was on the county board with me. And at one point I said, okay, now tell me, if you're out there in the field and a citizen's life was in danger, and you were in that situation where you were then having to put your life in danger to save the citizen, what would you do? He said, absolutely, I would put my life in danger to save a citizen. This is what we have here. And for people to come out and say we need to defund the police when they're the very people that put their lives on the line for you. Ask any of their families. During 9/11, they were running in, everyone else was running out. It's absurd. It's a terrible, absurd idea. Peaceful protesting is one thing. Throwing bricks into our beautiful stores on Magnificent Mile, our beautiful city being run amok by people who say they're peacefully protesting. No, it's wrong. It's terribly wrong. And I'm very afraid for the future. A friend of mine lives in Chicago, and I asked her, well, what's it like? She says, well, it's still boarded up. I said, well, are there policemen on the street? She said, yeah, but they come in droves. And that's not the way it should be working. They shouldn't just be coming, they're coming in droves because they're afraid to come any other way. And, you know, like the old fashioned, you know, 2 policemen on a beat. You know, we can't sustain it. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. And it's worrisome.
Thank you. Ken Mejia-Beal, I wonder if you could respond to that. What you see is the state of the need for criminal justice or police reform in Illinois.
Yes. So this is a tricky conversation. So I believe in police reform. Something that I'm an advocate for is mandatory body cam for our police officers, not just for civilians, but for the police officers. It would actually save us money when we look into lawsuits and things of that nature. I, as an African American, think that it's important to have good relationships with our police officers. I am from a police family, and I know that they go out there every day and put their lives in danger in some of the worst and most dangerous communities across our country. And I think they're entitled to our respect. But I also believe that there are a few bad apples. So I believe that we need stronger internal investigations against misconduct. I think any charge of misconduct should be looked into. I also believe in community. So I believe that a lot of folks, their first interaction with a police officer is a negative. They ran a red light. They got into some kind of trouble. And for me, being from a cop family, my interaction with police officers has never been negative, not my first one. So I think that we need our police officers to interact with the communities in a positive way. So maybe more meet and greets with police officers or in our schools. I definitely think that we have a long way to go, but I think having this conversation is the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Janet Yang-Rohr, how do you take that question?
Yeah, I think it's clear that we need some kind of reform. You know, the good thing is I think Naperville, our community, generally is in a really good place. And to a large extent, what I'd love to happen is to bring more of that at the state to more statewide level. At the state level, I think we should be doing things like making sure our law enforcement that they're truly trained in things like de-escalation, and making sure that we're using force as a last resort, making sure that when there is wrongdoing, that police are held accountable. But broadly, I think we need to approach these issues, these injustices from all sides, because whether you're Black, brown, or any other community of color, there's there's just, I think, bearing too much of this burden, and these injustices, and I think so much of what my campaign, and I know like Ken's campaign as well, is fighting for is making sure that we're addressing some of these issues. Like when we pass common sense gun laws, that means that helps our communities of color, because Black people are disproportionately affected and victims of gun violence, and we need to, of course, address these issues of access and opportunities, making sure that we're investing in education, because education is that tide that lifts all boats, making sure that we have affordable health care and that we have strong social services in place to address mental and physical health. And these are just some of the things I'm fighting for. I absolutely don't have all the answers, but what I do know is that we can't just keep ignoring these wrongs that are being committed against our fellow citizens and our neighbors. And I think we need to just really address more of these root causes of these issues so that we can really start making a difference.
Okay, thank you. Representative Wehrli will give you the last word.
Thank you. The tragedy in Minnesota, I fully condone, and elsewhere. We've seen it happen too many times all across our nation. But we found an area where myself and Janet agree. She says Naperville is a good place, and she's right. Because of leadership out of me when I spent 10 years on the Naperville City Council, when we were talking about training our police department, we eliminated chokeholds. They took training on de-escalation techniques. They were trained on how to interact with people with special needs in a law enforcement situation. Same thing to recognize mental health issues. So Naperville has been very proactive, and those are things that I took charge of when I was on the city council, which is why I'm trying to translate that down into Springfield. We talk about criminal justice reform. Illinois has been a leader when it comes to criminal justice reform over the last 6 years. I've participated in many of those pieces of legislation. Body cameras, I support body cameras. We need to find a way to pay for them, because last thing we can do is throw an unfunded mandate on local units of government. So we need to find the finances that go with it. I ran a bill that it went nowhere because the speaker doesn't want it to go anywhere, and it's a bad cop bill. Right now, it's a practice that if you get terminated for cause as a law enforcement officer in Illinois, what you do is that you then leave whatever that jurisdiction is and you apply to another one, and the chiefs can't talk to each other. So if you had somebody that was violating the law as a law enforcement officer, they get fired, they can go get hired somewhere else. That practice needs to stop. I'm not so sure. I'll move on. We talk about gun control. I was a proud sponsor of the red flag law. This is something where someone owns firearms legally. It still is a Second Amendment right under this, under our Constitution. But if they have mental health issues, if people around them see things that just aren't right, you can go in there and remove those firearms and put them in the hands of law enforcement. So we absolutely need to support good cops. Good cops hate bad cops, and they are in a very tough position right now. I am proud to be endorsed by the Illinois Sheriff's Association, and I'm endorsed because I can have these conversations. I want to make sure that we have the best law enforcement and first responders that we can afford, and that they're properly trained. But to just say defund police, that's chaos, that's anarchy, and that's something that I do not support. People live in our community because it's safe. We need to make sure that we keep it that way.
Thank you. That concludes today's interview. I want to thank the candidates for their time and for their participation and for their great professionalism that we saw today. Good luck on all your campaigns. The election is November 3rd. Early voting begins as early as September 24th by mail. So we encourage everyone to research all the candidates. And that includes all the races, include all the issues, to make use of the Daily Herald at dailyherald.com and of Shaw Media, and as part of the research. Ultimately, informed voting is one of the most sacred obligations that we have as democracy. So thank you all, and stay well.